Mike Collins had been driving for hours when the first snowflake hit his windshield. By the time he noticed the small green sign for Echo Lake, Maine, population 842, the snow was coming down in sheets. His GPS had died an hour ago, somewhere after he'd taken that wrong turn off the interstate. The rental car's heater struggled against the February chill. "Just need gas and directions," he muttered to himself, squinting through the windshield. The headlights revealed little beyond swirling white. The town materialized suddenly, a handful of buildings huddled against the storm, windows glowing amber in the gathering dark. Mike eased the car to a stop beside the only gas station, a weathered structure with a single pump that looked like it belonged in a museum. The sign above read Hansen's Gas and Goods in faded lettering. A bell jingled overhead as he pushed open the door. The interior was unexpectedly warm, packed with an odd assortment of fishing gear, canned goods, and dusty knickknacks. Behind the counter, a gaunt old man with wispy white hair looked up from a newspaper. "Evening," the old man said. His voice had a peculiar hollow quality, like someone talking in an empty hallway. "You're not from around here." "Just passing through," Mike replied, stamping snow from his boots. "Need to fill up and get back to the interstate." The old man studied him for an uncomfortable moment. "Interstate's a good 40 miles west. Storm's getting worse. You won't make it tonight." Mike glanced out the window. The snow was falling faster now, erasing the world beyond the glass. "There a motel around here?" "Old Lakeside Inn, down by the water. Carl'll take care of you." The old man pointed a bony finger east. "First time in Echo Lake?" "First and last, hopefully." Mike forced a laugh. "No offense." The old man didn't smile. "Folks say that a lot. But Echo Lake has a way of calling people back." He slid a visitor's map across the counter. "For the road. On the house." The Lakeside Inn was a 3-story Victorian structure that loomed against the night sky. At least a century old, Mike guessed, but well-maintained. Carla turned out to be a plump woman with a permanent smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Just you tonight?" she asked, sliding a heavy brass key across the reception desk. "Just me. Business trip gone wrong. I'll be out first thing in the morning." "Oh, I wouldn't count on that, dear," Carla said, that smile still fixed in place. "They're saying 2 feet by dawn. Roads won't be cleared till afternoon at the earliest." Mike's room on the 3rd floor was surprisingly spacious, with antique furniture and a view of what he assumed was Echo Lake, though he could see nothing but darkness through the window. The room was cold. The radiator in the corner hissed and clanked but gave little heat. He was unpacking when he noticed a small black device on the nightstand. It resembled an old transistor radio but had only a single red button in its center. No brand name, no other controls. Mike pressed the button. Nothing happened. Then he heard it, a soft whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Hello, Mike." He spun around, hard hammering. The room was empty. "Hello?" he called out. "Hello, Mike," the voice repeated, slightly louder now. It was neither male nor female, but something in between, with an unsettling musical quality. "Who's there?" "Just an echo," the voice replied. "Your echo." The radiator gave a sudden, violent clank, and Mike jumped, accidentally knocking the black device to the floor. It hit the wooden boards with a crack, and the whispering stopped. Must be some kind of local radio, he thought, his heart still racing. Some weird small-town prank for tourists. He picked up the device. The red button had popped off, revealing circuitry inside that looked impossibly complex for something so small. As he examined it, his finger brushed against something sharp, drawing blood. "Damn it," he muttered, sucking at the cut. That night, Mike dreamed of a lake, black and still under moonlight. In his dream, he walked to the edge of the water and called out his own name. "Mike. Mike Collins." The lake's surface rippled, and from its depths, his voice came back to him, distorted and wrong. "Mike. Mike Collins." But it wasn't just his name returning. Something was coming with it, rising from below. Morning brought silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed world of pristine white. Mike's car was nearly buried. According to Carla, the snowplows wouldn't reach Echo Lake until mid-afternoon. "Might as well see the town," she suggested, serving him coffee in the empty dining room. "Not much to do, but the lake's pretty when it's frozen over." "The lake," Mike said, remembering his dream. "Is there something unusual about it?" Carla's perpetual smile faltered for just a moment. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Just curious about the name, I guess. Echo Lake." Oh, that. The smile returned. Old local legend. They say the lake returns more than just sound. Call out over those waters, and sometimes you get back more than you bargained for. Mike spent the morning walking through the silent town. Echo Lake was barely more than a main street with a handful of side roads. Most businesses were closed, their windows dark. The few locals he passed nodded politely but didn't speak. There was something off about their eyes, a flatness, like painted dolls. The lake itself was vast and frozen, surrounded by dense pine forest. A wooden sign at the shore proclaimed, "Echo Lake, whisper your secrets, hear your truths." Standing at the edge, Mike felt a strange compulsion. Before he could stop himself, he cupped his hands around his mouth and called out across the ice. "Hello." The word hung in the frigid air for a moment, then came back to him, unnaturally clear despite the distance. "Hello." But there was something after it, a whispered addition he couldn't quite make out. He tried again, louder this time. "My name is Mike Collins." The returning echo was perfect but wrong. His voice, yet not his voice. "My name is Mike Collins. Come closer." A cold that had nothing to do with the February air settled into his bones. He turned to leave, and found himself face to face with the old man from the gas station. "Finding what you're looking for?" the old man asked, his breath forming thick clouds in the cold air. "Jesus, you scared me," Mike gasped. "I was just testing the echo," the old man finished for him. "Everyone does. What did it tell you?" "Nothing. Just echoed." The old man's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "The lake doesn't lie, Mr. Collins. If it spoke to you, there's a reason." "How do you know my name?" Mike demanded. "I never told you my name." The old man pointed a gnarled finger at the frozen surface. "The lake knows. And what the lake knows, we all know." He turned and shuffled away through the snow. "Best head back to the inn. Storm's coming." Mike looked up at the clear blue sky in confusion. There wasn't a cloud in sight. By mid-afternoon, the promised snowplows had not arrived. More disturbing, Mike's phone showed no service, and the inn's landline was mysteriously out of order. When he asked Carla about it, she merely shrugged. "Happens all the time after a big storm. We're used to being cut off." The day waned, and with sunset came another snowstorm, just as the old man had predicted. Worse than the first. Mike stood at his window, watching the world disappear once more beneath white. He noticed the black device had reappeared on his nightstand, the red button somehow fixed back in place. He was certain he'd left it broken on the desk across the room. This time, when he pressed the button, the response was immediate. "Welcome back, Mike. Ready to listen?" "What are you?" he demanded. "I'm you," the voice replied. "The you beneath the surface. The you that never lies. The you that knows why you really came to Echo Lake." "I didn't come here on purpose. I got lost." A soft, knowing laugh filled the room. "There are no accidents in Echo Lake. You came because you were called. Because you're empty inside, and emptiness echoes the loudest." Mike's hand trembled as he reached for the device, intending to throw it across the room. But his fingers wouldn't obey. Instead, they pressed the button again. "You've been running for so long," the voice continued. "From Boston. From what happened with Sarah. From what you did." Ice filled Mike's veins. "How do you know about Sarah?" "I know everything you know, Mike. I know how she looked that night. I know what you said to her. I know why she walked into that river." "Stop it," Mike whispered. "You can't run from an echo, Mike. It always catches up." Mike barely slept. When morning came, the town was buried under 4 feet of snow. No plows had arrived. No help was coming. Over breakfast, which he ate alone in the dining room, Carla informed him that the town was holding its annual winter festival that evening. "You should come," she said, refilling his coffee cup. "Everyone will be there." "Everyone in town?" "Everyone who belongs," she replied, that smile still fixed in place. Mike spent the day trying to dig out his car, but it was hopeless. The snow was too deep, and strange how the shovel Carla had provided seemed to make little impact, as if the snow were somehow refilling itself. By late afternoon, his hands were raw and his spirits lower than they'd been in months. Since Sarah. Since the river. As darkness fell, he could hear music coming from the direction of the town square. The Winter Festival. Against his better judgment, he decided to go. Anything to escape the whispering device in his room and his own crushing thoughts. The town had transformed. Lanterns hung from every available surface, casting warm golden light across the snow. A massive bonfire roared in the center of the square. The entire population of Echo Lake seemed to be there, gathered in a circle around the flames, swaying slightly to the strange, discordant music that came from somewhere Mike couldn't identify. The old man from the gas station spotted him and waved him over. "You decided to join us. Good." He pressed a cup of hot cider into Mike's hand. "Drink. It will help." "Help with what?" Mike asked, but drank anyway. The cider was sweet with an underlying bitterness that burned his throat. "The transition," the old man replied, "is always hardest the first time." "What transition?" The world had begun to spin slightly around Mike. The faces of the townspeople seemed to blur at the edges, their features running together like melting wax. "To becoming part of the Echo," the old man said, his voice taking on that same hollow quality Mike had heard from the device. "We all resist at first. We all think we're just passing through. But Echo Lake calls to those who need it, the empty ones, the ones with guilt so deep it creates a vacuum inside them." Mike tried to step back, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sarah," the old man said simply. "The river. The things you said that you can never take back." The circle of townspeople had tightened around them. Mike could see now what was wrong with their eyes. They weren't flat, they were depthless, like looking into still water. "How do you all know about that?" Mike's voice was barely a whisper. "Because we've all done something similar," Carla said, appearing beside him. "We've all sent someone into their own personal river. That's why we're here. That's why the lake called us." "I want to leave," Mike said, trying to force strength into his voice. The old man shook his head. "No one leaves Echo Lake. Not really. They just become part of it." The townspeople had begun to chant something, a rhythmic pulse that matched the strange music. As Mike looked around in mounting panic, he realized with horror that they all had his face, men, women, children, all wearing his features like masks that didn't quite fit. "What is this place?" he gasped. "It's where echoes come to die," the old man said, his face now also shifting, melting into Mike's own reflection. "And where the guilty come to live forever." The circle closed in. Mike tried to run, but his legs gave way beneath him. As he fell into the snow, the last thing he saw was the frozen surface of Echo Lake in the distance, cracking open like a mouth. Spring comes late to northern Maine. It was early May when David Patterson's car broke down on the rural highway outside of Echo Lake. The town appeared welcoming enough, a quaint main street, friendly faces. The mechanic said the parts would take a day or two to arrive. "There's a nice inn by the lake," the mechanic suggested. "Lakeside. Carl'll take good care of you." The Lakeside Inn was a charming Victorian building with a view of the water. David's room on the third floor was spacious, if a little cold despite the mild weather. That evening, he noticed a small black device on the nightstand with a single red button. When he pressed it, a voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Hello, David. Welcome to Echo Lake. We've been waiting for you." The voice sounded eerily familiar, though David couldn't place it. "We know about Jessica," the voice continued. "We know why you've been running." David's blood ran cold. No one knew about Jessica. No one could know what had happened that night. Outside his window, he could see the still waters of Echo Lake gleaming in the moonlight. For a moment, he thought he saw faces beneath the surface, dozens of them, all wearing the same expression of peaceful acceptance. The device spoke again, but now it was in his own voice, speaking the words he'd been running from for months. "There's room for one more in Echo Lake, David. There's always room for one more Echo."